Hey guys, Happy New Year and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about how I get back into painting after a long break. And I wanted to talk about this because I recently was off for the holidays, I was seeing family, and I wasn't painting for a while, for about a couple weeks during that time, which might not seem like a big break, but for me, being a daily painter, like not painting for a couple weeks felt like a huge break. And so when once the holidays were over and I started painting again, I was feeling a little rusty and also kind of getting like the feeling of like the inner critic saying that I forgot how to paint or I wouldn't be able to paint again. I mean, it seems ridiculous after doing so many paintings, but every time I take a break, I always start to feel that way. And so I realized, like, over time when I'm coming back from break, then it's really important to do that in a way that kind of helps ease me back into painting and that helps me warm up and kind of just like dust off my skills a bit before I start on any major pieces. And after my long break, I built up a lot of big ideas of pieces that I wanted to do. So when I got back into the studio, I immediately pulled out one of my big canvases and started working on that. But I just felt so much fear, and I really felt the inner critic saying that I didn't know what I was doing or that it would be too hard. And I realized it was really holding me back and preventing me from getting into a good creative flow. So I decided to take a step back, put the larger projects on hold for a second, and do some smaller warm-up exercises that would help me get back into the flow so that I could go on to these other pieces. And so that's where the idea of painting warm-ups comes in. So the idea of a painting warm-up is that it's not like you're doing a big important piece of art. It's a smaller painting, a simple exercise you can do to help brush off your skills. And I think this doesn't only apply to painting, but it applies to a lot of other creative activities. So maybe if you do music, if you do design, I think it can be helpful to do these small exercises if you're feeling a little rusty and you're trying to get back into a groove. And I think this can also be helpful if you take a short break from painting. Maybe for you that's a couple weeks like me, or maybe it's even a few years and you're trying to get back into painting or get back into art after a really, really long break. But I think the important thing here is to ease yourself in with some small exercises that are just really low pressure and that just start, getting your hands moving again, getting your brain thinking in that art way again. So today I'm going to show you the exercise that I decided to do to get started. Here are the paintings behind me that I was working on, and let's check it out. So this exercise that I'm doing today is borrowed from Sarah Sedgwick. She's an amazing oil painting teacher. If you haven't seen her classes before, I highly recommend it. And one of the things that she talks about doing is this exercise called Twisted 20s, where you basically set up a still life and then you paint it for 20 minutes, and every 20 minutes you shift the still life around and you paint it from a different angle. So I decided to take some inspiration from this. I wanted to keep it really simple and just like really low pressure, so I am working on very small pieces of oil painting paper. I think they're around 4 inches by 4 inches each. And so since I was working so small, I decided to try to do it even faster, doing the paintings in just 15 minutes for each little sketch. And so I just took this mandarin or some mandarins that I had lying around and thought it'd be nice to peel some of them, kind of scatter some of them around on this like white sheet of paper and just paint what I saw. So it's not about trying to create a beautiful painting or make a masterpiece or anything like that. I really just wanted to get a little bit of inspiration, something nice that I could use to practice just putting paint onto paper again, mixing colors, placing brush strokes in a way that was really nice, and just kind of getting back into the painting groove. So what I did for this exercise also is, before I started actually putting the paint on the paper, I did pre-mix the paint in advance. So I looked at the colors of the still life and I mixed those colors before actually starting to paint the still life. You could do it, like if you wanted to do this exercise, you could include the color mixing time in your painting time. I just decided to do it this way because when I took Sarah Sedgwick's class, that's kind of how she had it set up. You can see at this point, I've gotten down the major colors of the oranges for the first composition. I've just laid out these big blocks of orange color and the kind of grayish purple of the shadows. And then I'm going in and kind of refining the shapes of the orange while also putting in the color of the background, which is this nice white paper. And here, like as I'm painting, I'm trying not to get too much into the details because I only have 15 minutes for each little study, but I am trying to notice like small nuances. For example, how the paper that's closer to me has sort of a warmer feel and a warmer color to it versus in the background more it's slightly cooler, it's slightly bluer. So although these exercises are supposed to be, I'm really trying to get kind of the major essential parts of what I'm seeing, I'm still trying to like pick up on some of these more subtle phenomena that I'm observing at the same time. And just remember, the whole point of these exercises is it's not about trying to make a perfect painting, but it's really trying to capture what is the essence of the image that you're looking at, what is the most important thing that you need to convey to make that image work. And so as I'm painting, I'm squinting a lot, I'm looking at the image, I'm thinking, okay, maybe there are a lot of highlights that I'm seeing, but I'm going to try to pick out the most essential highlights and place those in just the right place to communicate what I'm trying to say. So at this point, I'm just finishing up with this painting. I think I've communicated most of what needs to be said. I am happy with the vibrancy of the oranges that I've brought out, and I think I'm giving enough information about the light and shadow to create an image that's believable. Is it the perfect painting? No, it's definitely still just a sketch, but overall, I think it gives me some inspiration as to where I could go next. And as I move on to the next painting, I already feel like I'm a lot less rusty. Oh, and one thing that I want to note is that here I'm also drawing in, I'm doing just a basic drawing first before I lay down paint. Usually when I paint, I like to do a sort of underpainting in like burnt sienna, and I'll often do that the day before I paint, mixing in some alkyd medium to get the paint to dry faster so that then the next day it'll be pretty dry. The underpainting will be dry and then I can lay in color. But because I wanted to do these studies so quickly, I'm just going in with pencil here and doing the drawing. But as I was saying, I definitely felt like after the first painting, like the first one, I was really nervous to get started and to make it happen. But once I did that first painting and I saw, okay, like I know how to use paintbrushes, I know how to put color together, then I could already feel like I was building up some confidence. And so I felt a lot more excited going into the second painting. And also as I was going into the second painting, I had the advantage of seeing how the colors had worked in the first painting and seeing what worked well, what didn't work so well, the things that I wanted to change. So for this second painting, I was trying to keep those lessons in mind. And also, as I did the first painting, I was kind of adjusting my color mixtures to better match what I was seeing. Because as I said, I'd mixed the colors in advance, but then I wanted to, the colors that I mix in advance are not always necessarily going to be right. And so while I'm painting, I'll continue to make adjustments to those mixtures. So I was able to make those adjustments here, and I feel like as I painted more, I was getting more and more of an effect of realism in my painting, which I really liked. This second painting was also interesting because there was a lot of that kind of inner white skin of the mandarins. So we have like its peel that's going off to the side, and then also on the part that's exposed, there is some of the peel left over on the inner part that's exposed. So I started bringing in some more of those kind of cool gray-blue colors to convey that image that I was seeing. And one of the things I notice when I do these sketches is that I really start to simplify a lot of things into straight lines. So you can see that the oranges themselves, they're very round, they're very curvy, and I find that really it's almost as if the curves are this unnecessary complexity that I can still convey the feeling of roundness without making everything perfectly round. And so you'll see that a lot of my brush strokes, I'm just making very straight lines that are gently carving out these rounder shapes, but it's still not completely round. And I still am kind of giving them almost a more geometric look than these perfectly curved oranges. And part of that is just because when you're painting so quickly, it's really hard, I think, to paint a perfect circle quickly, but it's really easy to paint a straight line very fast. And I think actually I really like that effect. Even when I have more time to paint, I like bringing in more of those straight lines into my painting, which is something really cool that I might not have learned if I was always painting just very, very slowly and not doing exercises like this. I think that when we give ourselves limitations, like giving ourselves a really, really restricted time limit to do a painting, or maybe you can also say, okay, I'm going to try to do this painting in just 20 brush strokes, or any sort of limitations can help us make some creative discoveries. And so that's another reason why I like to do these exercises. It's not just to build up brush mileage or to feel less rusty, but it's also about making these discoveries that would only happen under these circumstances. For the final painting, I decided to go with longer composition. I don't know exactly what you would call this composition, but it's a very stretched out rectangle, maybe an elongated portrait composition. But I thought that that would work well with the shapes that I was seeing, because here I have two of the mandarins together, similar to what I painted in the last study, but now we have that the skin of one of the mandarins is, or the peel of the mandarin, skin sounds weird, but the peel of the mandarin is curling towards us and kind of creating this really pretty sense of movement that then is complemented by the other mandarin in the back. So I thought that that would work really well in this like longer format composition. And this time I decided to go in with the shadows first. I think I did that one in the last one too, but sometimes I'll go in with the most saturated color first, especially if it's an overall very gray composition and I'm kind of uncertain what colors the shadows are. Sometimes I actually find it easier to start with the most saturated color that's easiest to identify. But after doing a couple of these, I was pretty confident in the shadow color that I wanted to use. And so I started with that dark color first and then started building up the lights, which is generally how I go through with my alla prima paintings. And in the last painting, I really enjoyed some of the moments around the orange peel, especially going in with those bits of orange around the edge or the little highlights on the white parts of the skin that really bring it out and make it pop. So I was excited to explore that idea more in this one. And even like at this point, adding in the highlights that are on kind of the white parts of the peel that are stuck to the inner part of the orange. I was really enjoying figuring out how to simplify that detail to convey it without articulating all of those little pieces of white that you see if you look at it. And here I think it was really helpful to just keep squinting at the orange and figuring out what are the big shapes that I'm seeing. Once I've got the major shapes of the orange laid out, then I go back in and I start carving out the shapes and refining them more by putting in the white background. And again, I'm kind of using this insight that the foreground was slightly warmer than the part of the paper that was further in the background. So I'm trying to bring that into this painting, although as I was putting it in, I kind of thought, it almost felt a little too disconnected. So I went back into the foreground seemed a little too yellow and warm compared to the background. And so I went back in later to add in a bit more blue to the foreground just to make it just to keep a bit of the color harmony going on. And lastly, so I've got the major shapes laid out, I have the background painted in, so then it just comes down to refining some details. And so I wanted to add some of like the bluish shadows of the skin on the inner part of the orange to give that effect and to help convey the feeling that the orange was curving. Although I don't know if that was entirely necessary, because I do feel like those white highlights were already kind of giving it this curving sensation. Maybe in the future, if I do another timed challenge, maybe I could try leaving that out and seeing how it works. Although I do think that adding some of those bluer tones did give a nice effect to the painting. I also added some more highlights to the inner part of the orange, to the slices, that I really think helped give it that extra 3D effect and gave it a little bit of extra detail without being too much. So here are the 3 final paintings. Here's the outcome. Overall, I'm really happy with how they turned out, and I think I learned a lot through these 3 little studies. And after doing these small paintings, I definitely felt more confident and more excited to get started on some of my larger studio projects. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any tips on getting back into painting or how you get back into your creative activity after a really long break, let me know in the comments below. And I want to give a huge shout out to all my supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your support. You help support my art and make these videos happen. And seriously, you guys are the best. If you like my art or you like my videos, consider joining my Patreon at the link below. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.